After what's happened in agriculture over the last couple of years with prices going way up and then way back down on just about everything from fertilizer to ag chemicals and unfortunately with the commodity markets as well, it seems like there are a lot of farmers out there who are just spooked. And as soon as prices start going down, they're like, should I buy? Should I buy? Should I buy? Should I buy? Well, with glyphosate, we're just about there yet.
Well, the emotions of the market are sure in full effect out there. And if you've gotten spooked, as Brian says, from last year, don't rush into decisions. We're going to talk about glyphosate just a little bit today and how it is a major herbicide in many of the programs. You look at Roundup Ready soybeans just dominating across the country and Roundup Ready corn growing in usage as well. So there is going to be a lot of glyphosate used, but we want to talk about when the right time to buy is and how you're going to make that decision, because there are different types of glyphosate out there with different value packages associated with them.
Okay, let's just step back in time just a little bit. What happened back a couple of years ago is the Olympics were coming to China. They were there in 2008.
Hold on. We're talking about glyphosate here, aren't we?
Yep, that's right. So we start talking about glyphosate and you say, what do the Olympics possibly have to do with glyphosate? You know what? The Olympics were the #1 factor why we had higher glyphosate prices, because quite frankly, China was trying to put on their very best show. Well, in order to do that, they didn't want as much air and water pollution in their country, which is great, but in doing that, they shut down all kinds of manufacturing plants, some of which were glyphosate plants.
Not to mention the mining capabilities too. There's yellow phosphate that goes into making glyphosate, and a lot of that is coming out of mines that are in China.
So basically, this started happening in 2006. The day that the Olympics got over, a lot of plants started up production again. So we were short on production for a couple of years there, and all of a sudden in late August in 2008, production started back up again at a lot of these plants. Now, we had heard, and a lot of farmers were talking, oh, they're never coming back online again. China's trying to make sure their environment's really clean. That didn't exactly happen. I mean, maybe their environment is cleaner, maybe they have newer, better plants. We don't know exactly. All we know is now there is literally a glut of glyphosate on the market. And according to a few pretty reliable sources that I have heard from, they've told me, look, we've already got enough glyphosate produced, manufactured, it's sitting on floors somewhere around the world to supply the entire world's needs for all of 2010. Okay, well, it's just like you and me. If we produced enough corn, not only for this year, but for all of next year too, what would happen to our corn price? It would drop down below production costs, and that's exactly what's happening with glyphosate right now. Today, you can probably buy glyphosate for less than production cost in a lot of places around the world.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad as a farmer. As other prices have gone up, at least something's coming down, and glyphosate is, as I mentioned before, a major herbicide being used. So the question is, how are you going to use glyphosate this year compared to last year, and what type of program would you go with moving into corn and soybeans specifically?
I mean, if you start talking about $2 to $4 glyphosate per acre, you know, and you say, well, boy, for these weeds I've got here, I'm going to need a double rate. Ooh, whoop-de-doo, you're going to spend an extra $2 to $4 an acre. Who cares? You know, last year when you were spending, let's say, $7 to $10 an acre, and you had to double that, you said, oh, I don't know if I want to spend another $7 to $10. So that really changes a lot of plans. What we think is going to happen this year is there are still going to be a lot of people using pre-emerge herbicides and a lot of people using tank mix partners with Roundup, but they're going to be increasing the Roundup rate as a general rule just because Roundup's cheaper.
All right, let's talk right now in the burn down market in the fall. With glyphosate, there's a couple of things around that frost date and how much glyphosate you're going to use, but also with fertilizer. If you're going to be spraying some fertilizer out there too, what do? Do you use a tank mix partner? Do you go straight glyphosate?
Okay.
When do you do it?
Okay, if it was me and I had a lot of, let's say, perennial weeds, I would want to run with a very high rate of glyphosate. I'm talking 2 to 3 quarts of 4-pound glyphosate per acre. Go a strong rate. It doesn't cost you very much money. Do that and have it over with. But here's the thing. If you've already had your first hard killing frost, you're too late. So then you need to switch over and use something like dicamba or 2,4-D, one of those products. They're not going to do nearly as good a job as what glyphosate will do, but if you've already had your first hard killing frost, you're too late for the perennials. You can't get that glyphosate down into the root system of the perennial weed. So you're too late. As far as fertilizer goes, you don't want to tank mix things like liquid 28% or other fertilizers in with glyphosate because sometimes they can neutralize some of the glyphosate. That's not a good deal.
Now you're talking about high rates of fertilizer. Now obviously low rates of fertilizer like ammonium sulfate at 17 pounds per 100 gallons of water. That's a standard recommendation.
Yeah, but if it's spray grade ammonium sulfate, that's different than fertilizer grade ammonium sulfate. Fertilizer grade ammonium sulfate has a lot of impurities, and those impurities a lot of times are the ones that neutralize the Roundup.
All right, now the other question is, when generic 4-pound glyphosate gets so cheap, do I go with generic this year? Do I go back to a name brand program like with Syngenta or Dow or Monsanto?
In late August and early September, before Monsanto lowered their price, a lot of guys were saying, oh, I'm going all generic in 2010. And then Monsanto came out with Weather Max at $4 an acre or less, and guys said, whoa, you mean I only have to spend about an extra $1, $1.50, and I can have the name brand stuff, plus I can get all these guarantees and assistance with volunteer corn control and everything else? You know, Monsanto's got an awfully aggressive offer out there, and the reason why they do is they've got a bunch of product left over from last year, plus they increased their manufacturing capabilities. So they dramatically lowered their price. They cut their price in about a third and left all the benefits with it. So, I mean, literally, there are going to be some people that are paying less than zero net for their glyphosate when they buy name brand Roundup because of all the benefits that they get to it. It's hard to beat less than zero for a price. But as a farmer, I'd probably still complain about that, you know.
Well, the glyphosate price is certainly down significantly from last year, but you really do need to look at all the offers on the table before you jump at the very first one you get. So what we're saying is just walk into glyphosate cautiously at first here this fall and into the winter. Don't get too excited that, oh boy, the price is down from last year, I'm going to buy right now. It may still be coming down a little bit, and there's some offers that are a little more complex than others.
Yeah, our point is we may have reached the low on the glyphosate price, but most likely we're not going to have a significant increase between now and early January. So if for tax reasons you need to wait until we get to early January to buy, just go ahead and do that. You're probably not at very much risk. The price is not going to double or triple in price in the next 2 to 3 months. So you don't have anything to worry about. But again, whichever way you go, generic glyphosate or name brand Roundup, you're going to find a really good deal and very, very low prices this fall and early this winter.
Well, that's good news, especially if you have weeds to control like our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?